Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Carnal Conservative, and we are talking about Russia and why Russia has attacked Ukraine. Now, my fellow Americans, I understand. I understand the need to flex our muscle and, enforce democracy and liberalism wherever it needs to happen. Now, but I have an issue with that because all of a sudden the left, the people who are telling us that American colonialism is the evil, the paradoxical white stain upon all of our history, now they want you to be tribal. Now they want you to think about the families that are the families and the expats that are American in Ukraine because reasons. But we're going to go back in history just a little bit. This was in November 30th, 2021. Putin warns Russia will act if NATO crosses its red lines in Ukraine. Here we go. Putin complains of the Western military activity in Ukraine. Says development of strike weapons, they're a red line. Says he hopes common sense will prevail. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Donald Trump being the force that kept Putin at bay. Well, not necessarily. Since November, President Vladimir Putin said on Tuesday that Russia will be forced to act if its red lines on Ukraine were crossed by NATO, saying Moscow would view the deployment of certain offensive missile capabilities on Ukrainian soil as a trigger. No shit. Again, speaking at an investment forum in Moscow, Putin said he hoped common sense would prevail on all sides, but that he wanted NATO to be aware of Russia's own security concerns around Ukraine and how it would respond if the West continued to help Kiev expand its military infrastructure. Quote, if some kind of strike systems appear on the territory of Ukraine, the flight time to Moscow will be 3 to 10 minutes. And 5 minutes in the case of a hypersonic weapon being deployed. Just imagine. What are we to do in such a scenario? We will have to then create something similar in relation to those who threaten us in that way. And we can do that now. Putin said that Russia had just successfully tested a new sea-based hypersonic missile, which would be in service at the start of the new year. He said it had the flight time of 5 minutes at 9 times the speed of sound. Ahem. The Russian leader, who questioned why NATO had ignored repeated Russian warnings and expanded its military infrastructure eastwards, singled out the deployment in Poland and Romania of the Aegis Ashore missile defense system. He made it clear he did not want to see the same launch Mk-41 systems, which Russia had long complained can be used to also launch offensive Tomahawk cruise missiles in Ukraine. So we have clear red lines. And we have Ukraine attempting to join NATO at the behest of NATO itself and other Western allies. Creating such threats in Ukraine will be red lines for us. I apologize for the ads, but I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that common sense, responsibility for both our countries and the world community will prevail. Earlier on Tuesday, the United States and Britain warned Russia over any new military aggression against Ukraine as NATO met to discuss why Russia had moved troops closer to its southern neighbor. It really doesn't matter. Russia can move troops wherever the fuck they want in Russia. I mean, you don't get to tell the United States to not have military installations at the north of our borders nor in the south. That's a non-starter to start off with. But why is Putin being a particular dick about red lines in Ukraine? Well, there are good reasons for that. Let's take a look. And the answer seems to be that all the way back in 2015, Russia bans George Soros Foundation as state security threat. Russia has banned a quote-unquote, I'm going to add the quotations here, pro-democracy charity founded by the hedge fund billionaire and philanthropist George Soros, saying it posed a threat to both state security and the Russian Constitution. In a statement released on Monday, Russia's General Prosecutor's Office said two branches of Soros' charity network, the Open Society Foundations and the Open Society Institute Assistance Foundation, would be placed on a stop list of foreign non-governmental organizations whose activities have been deemed undesirable by the Russian state. And not just by the Russian state. We'll discover a little later that it's the Russian people that these organizations and foundations are actually actively working against. It was found that the activity of the Open Society Foundations and the Open Society Institute Assistance Foundation represents a threat to the foundations of the constitutional system of the Russian Federation and the security of the state, the statement said. It did not elaborate, but the Hungarian-born Soros urged the West earlier this year to step up aid to Ukraine. No fucking shit. You cannot make this shit up, people. It's not a game. It's all connected. It is line by line what Soros wants. Soros wants Ukraine to be a NATO ally. For all the things that George Soros' Open Society Foundations promotes, which is diversity, inclusion, equity, and all the other bad isms we know and recognize in the West as cancerous nodes that need to be eradicated, but for some odd reason, we just can't seem to muster it up. We just can't get it done. The Open Society Foundation said it was dismayed by the Russian decision. Contrary to the Russian prosecutor's allegations, the Open Society Foundations have, for more than a quarter century, helped to strengthen the rule of law in Russia and protect the rights of all. Well, and that's the real crux of the matter, is does Russia, the people, not just Vladimir Putin and his, shall we say, oligarchical system? No, we're talking about the Russian people. Do the Russian people want rights of all as prescribed by the Open Society Foundations? Let me give you a hint. The answer is no. And we'll see that in just a moment. This is 11 months ago, April 6th of 2021. Putin formally banned same-sex marriages in Russia. Same-sex marriages in Russia. Series of constitutional amendments signed into law on Monday. Now, as I said, this was about the Russian people. This was not about Putin's oligarchy, not about his agenda or his personal leanings. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday signed a series of constitutional amendments that, among other things, formally defines marriage as between a man and a woman in the country. Now, I know some of you have seen my other videos where I went over the history of gay marriage in America and the true history of that quote-unquote movement, and it was not democratic in any way, shape, or form. The people voted. The people voted to keep traditional marriage as between a man and a woman, and our elites gave edicts that said otherwise and subverted the votes and wills of the people. Contrary, the Associated Press reports upwards of 78% of Russian voters backed the amendments in a referendum that took place last July. Russian lawmakers later approved the constitutional changes that also allow Putin to run for president 2 more times. This was voted on by the people at a clip of 78%. This is not one of those scary, oh no, I got 100% of the vote, they all love me, Saddam Hussein era type bullshit. This is a valid number, 78%. That is enough dissidents to go, okay, not everyone feels this way, but everyone else largely feels this way. This is what the Russian people want. This is what Vladimir Putin is willing to give them because, he likes being in power. What's the big deal? And we know that people who are against the traditional family unit, like the George Soros Open Society Foundation, are using Ukraine as a foothold to leverage Russia to do what they want rather than what the Russians want. So, let's bring it to the last thing that makes Russia super, super based. Russia to introduce life sentences in Arctic prison camps for repeat pedophiles. No. Block, cancel. Alright, so once again, prison camps in the Arctic for repeat pedophiles as of January 9th this year. Now, Russia is expected to introduce life sentences for pedophiles and jail them in Arctic prisons in response to the horrific rape and murder of a 5-year-old girl whose abduction was captured on video. Russia may sentence pedophile rapists to life in Arctic prison. Now, if you've heard more of this story, it is far more depraved than you think. The two men that you're looking at are, in fact, homosexual lovers. And they took this girl on a whim to satisfy one of their fetishes. Now, and the age of these individuals, you have a youngish 20-year-old, and a man in his older 50s. One watched and the other entertained the watcher, is what happened in this scenario. Parliamentary speaker said those who sexually abuse children, quote, cannot be called human. Again, based Russia. And vowed even tougher measures by sending all pedophiles to polar regions to serve their sentences. The draft law to increase penalties had its first reading late last. Under the proposed rule change, Russians who have already been convicted of pedophilia and who attack children again could be sentenced to life in prison. Those convicted of such crimes should serve life sentences in the harshest conditions in the extreme north or in the mines. These bastards should undergo the hardest labor so they remember the crimes they committed every day and regret them. Russia's to tighten its child sex laws this month to automatically jail repeat pedophiles for life in harsh polar prisons. This is the kind of shit that the Soros Open Foundation is against and wants to leverage itself against Russia to repeal. That's what Russia's fighting against, by the way. I understand that there's a bunch of bullshit. I understand there's a bunch of noise about, oh, there are Nazis in Russia. I understand Putin's kind of exaggerating. I get that. I know that he's making claims about moving into these acknowledged republics that are currently in Ukraine that have petitioned Russia for recognition. And Russia is granting that recognition. Not only are they granting that recognition, they're moving far more westward to make sure that the recognition will continue by conquering the whole of Ukraine. Why? Because red lines were crossed and military ventures were being made. And people like George Soros and the Open Society Foundation are using Ukraine as a foothold to influence in negative ways the will of the people in Russia. Get that through your thick skull. So what are we actually fighting against is my primary point, and what I'm going to try and articulate here. Give me one moment. Now, this was posted a day ago. It was a Tucker Carlson segment, which people are trying to condemn Tucker for looking at the left and looking at Russia and going, why are we getting involved in this? Why are we having any say in it whatsoever? And he actually aired clips of people saying, oh, history will judge Tucker Carlson. We the people, we want democracy everywhere. And I will point you to the like and dislike ratio that you can't see normally on YouTube. You have to install an extension and take a snapshot and take a screenshot of it in a browser rather than the YouTube app to see the likes and dislikes. How do Americans feel about getting involved in Russia doing the typical American preemptive strike and self-defense line, which is exactly what Vladimir Putin is doing, in essence. How many Americans look at this and go, oh, Russia's terrible, we need to stop them now? Nearly fucking no one. 78,000 likes. It's been viewed nearly 2 million times, by the way. 78,000 likes compared to almost just shy of 4,000 dislikes. I don't want to be one of the 4,000. I don't know what's going on through the mind of the 4,000. I don't know how you could look at Russia, their social climate, their political position here, and their military position and go, oh my gosh, Russia, these terrible, evil people oppressing the Ukrainians. Fuck that shit. This is the same country where Joe Biden's son got on a energy board company and swindled them out of thousands of dollars, got a crack pipe, is on the record, on the laptop dossier, soliciting prostitutes that were probably underage. Victims of child sex trafficking were given to Hunter Biden in Ukraine because Ukraine is being used as a foothold by the degenerate West to infiltrate and destroy anything of any moral good that the Russian people might have left living under a dictator like Putin. Look, I'm not going to say anything good about the man. He's doing what he has to do to stay in power, and by the grace of God, it seems, Vladimir can only stay in power if and when